it, never taking whatever you told me. I know what I could be.
Hey guys, Xtian here. Welcome back to another video. Ngayon, we're going to talk about the MSI Gaming X TRIO GeForce RTX 3090, its unique features, and of course, yung pinakahihintay nyo, ang benchmarks. Sa last video ko, in-unbox ko yung card, so diretso na tayo sa features. Of course, being an RTX 3090, this has a 24GB of GDDR6X video memory, PCIe Gen 4 support, more CUDA cores than ever, and NVLink, which sa 30 series is yung 3090 lang ang meron. In terms of features, meron itong Tri-Fan which is MSI Tri-Frozer 2 thermal design with Torx Fan 4.0, and of course, Lightning Z RGB that supports MSI's Mystic Light. Meron din itong airflow control which means it guides the air to the part where it needs to be cooled. So parang diretso talaga sa heatsinks and heat pipe ang airflow nito. Also, there's the core pipes which according to MSI are precision machined for maximum contact on the GPU and spread the heat throughout the heatsink for optimal cooling. It also has 3 PCIe 8-pin connectors, and the video output has 1 HDMI 2.1 and 3 DisplayPort 1.4a ports. Now for the benchmarks, the MSI Gaming X TRIO GeForce RTX 3090 is paired with the provided test bench which you'll see the specs sa screen. Benchmark data was gathered using the game's built-in benchmark, MSI's Afterburner, and HWInfo64 for the temperature. Games are also tested on 3 resolutions, 4K, 1440p, and 1080p. Unfortunately, wala akong 8K display dito that can be used to test the card in 8K gaming. First is F1 2020, which is a GPU-intensive game. In 4K Ultra settings, we got an average FPS of 163 with a maximum FPS of 180. Turning down to 1440p, then we have an average FPS of 221 and a maximum of 264. Down to 1080p, we have an average FPS of 230 and maximum of 273, which in my opinion does not really have much of a difference. Next is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. In 4K Ultra, we have an average of 98 FPS and a maximum of 139, while on 1440p, we have an average of 167 FPS and a maximum of 243. Turning it lower to 1080p give us even more with an average of 232 and a maximum FPS of 356. On Far Cry New Dawn at 4K Ultra, we have an average of 99 and a maximum of 128 FPS, and in 1440p, an average of 110 and a maximum of 172 FPS. Scaling down to 1080p, weirdly, we got almost similar results, averaging around 105 and maxing out at 165 FPS. Which gives me the thought that we might have been limited by the processor we've used for this test. Stay tuned for another video where we'll test this card even further. Naisip ko din to test the card on a game with ray tracing or RTX. So I picked Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which had a very simple RTX on and off switch sa settings. In 4K Ultra with RTX on, we got an average of 83 FPS. Turning ray tracing off give us an average of 108 FPS. Which means that by now, turning RTX on will not give a big dip sa FPS, unlike before and still on the playable side. On 1440p Ultra naman with RTX on, we got an average of 130 FPS and RTX off give us an average of 162 FPS. Finally, turning the resolution down to 1080p Ultra give us an average of 151 FPS with RTX on and 197 FPS without RTX. To add more, I also tested with GTA 5, where in 4K very high settings, we got an average of 76 FPS and a maximum of 102 FPS. Then in 1440p, we got an average of 136 and a maximum of 188 FPS. Lastly, 1080p gave us an average of 154 FPS while having a similar maximum of 188 FPS. Last on our initial game benchmark is CSGO, which is panigurado tatakbo to kahit siguro sa mababang GPU. At 4K, with all settings maxed out, we got an average of 365 FPS, and in 1440p, we got an average of 475 FPS. Down to 1080p, we got an average of 518 FPS. Next is temperature performance. The following data is the temperature measured during our game test runs, gathered using HWInfo64 and with an ambient temperature of 28 degrees on an air-conditioned room and an open testbed. As you can see, the card maxes out at 77 degrees Celsius on a full load or while gaming. And although on full load, hindi ganun kalakas ang fans niya nor audible. So kudos for that, MSI. Other tests I've done as well is 3D Mark, the Time Spy Extreme, which is a test of our GPU and CPU. On 4K settings, we got a score of 10,464. Also tested was a 3D Mark's Port Royal Ray Trace benchmark, which tests a card's ray tracing capabilities. In 1440p, which seemed to be its default setting, we got a score of 13,378. Then on V-Ray, we got a score of 847 on its GPU test. We also have Blender benchmark for those who are into rendering stuff. The following data shows the several test projects Blender had, showing how long our hardware can render the projects. These tests were run with CUDA enabled. Finally, we also have the system power draw. As you can see, we have the power draw of the whole system ranging at around 480 to 550 watts, considering the card is rated at 370 watts alone. Perhaps the reason why NVIDIA is recommending a minimum of 750 watt power supply and above for both the RTX 3080 and 3090 is that because these cards are also high powered and give you enough headroom for maybe overclocking the GPU as well as yung turbo or yung clock boosting ng CPU and of course, other devices on your system. For the card's pricing, the MSI Gaming X TRIO GeForce RTX 3090 is priced at around 93,000 pesos SRP. Not bad considering this is a top-of-the-line 1390 card from MSI. So that's it. In my opinion, if you're into gaming and creating contents like videos, 3D rendering, or into production work at the same time, then get the RTX 3090. Surely, you will appreciate the larger video memory available for those applications. However, kung kayo ay into pure gaming lang like on 4K, it doesn't even think about gaming on 8K sa ngayon dahil for sure, hindi pa mainstream ngayon ang 8K displays. Unless you're ready to shell out like $3,000 to $4,000 for an 8K monitor. Then get the RTX 3080 from someone like MSI. Guys, available din yung Gaming X TRIO RTX 3080 ni MSI. So kayang-kaya ang 4K gaming nun. Honest opinion ko lang. Also, feeling ko medyo nalilimit tayo ng CPU natin for this test. So I might make a follow-up video for this with more data and testing on higher-end CPUs. Stay tuned for that. Sa ngayon kasi, we only have the Ryzen 7 3800 XT in hand for this test. Alright, so there you go guys. Sa mga naghihintay sa inyo sa mga RTX na 30 series na PC builds natin, so stay tuned for that. Nangangalap lang ako ng mga ibang components. Ayan, so before I end this video guys, I wanna give a huge shout out kay MSI Gaming, for sending this RTX 3090 na Gaming X TRIO. Ayan, maraming salamat kay Sir Jason. So there you have it. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Xtian. So like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you on my next video.